you're going to be reasonable and logical in the middle of this knockdown, drag-out fight about parenting.
Well, not knockdown, drag
Okay,
out, but
it was a
it's
metaphor.
An idiom.
It
Okay.
didn't mean
yes.
no hitting.
No, just this
but-
this intense conversation and argument.
Yeah, because every conflict with your spouse or with someone else, but every conflict, your brain responds to it the same way. You're still triggering that fight, flight, or freeze response in the limbic system.
Right,
You may be one choice away from a thriving marriage. Welcome to the Operation Thriving Marriage podcast with Bryon and Jennifer Harvey.
Welcome to the Operation Thriving Marriage podcast. Bryon Harvey here with my amazing wife, Jen.
and our amazing producer, Todd.
Hey, Todd, happy to have you here with us. Yeah, and you guys all got to enjoy Todd for the first time in our last episode, for our 100th episode, where Todd got to come in and be a part of the podcast. That was a lot of fun.
Best episode ever.
Hope you guys take time to listen to that if you haven't already. We had a great time doing something a little different, but now we're back to our normal format, sort of. We're doing things a little bit different this time, though.
Right, because we've got a 3-part series coming up here, and we're kind of multitasking a little bit, just kind of going into the new year, because we have a class coming up that we're teaching at our church.
Yes, and so we're going to be doing a class on communication and conflict resolution, and we're going to do a 3-part series on addressing some of the issues with that. The class is obviously going to cover a lot more, and a lot of the stuff that, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, we've talked about in different episodes. But it's interesting talking to couples and teaching classes and different things. One of the things that is a common complaint, I guess, certainly couples that consume marriage literature, that listen to marriage podcasts. One of the things, like, okay, I get it. I know what to do. It's kind of like when we first got married, and we were kind of learning about finances, and you knew way more about finance than I did. You'd watch these different, it was popular for a while, the financial planners on television. And for me, it was interesting because,
and they're still out there, or at least they've taken over the internet, right?
I suppose. It was more in my face when you were watching them when we first got married, and we'd watch different ones, and they'd all kind of say the same thing with their own twist.
Oh, absolutely.
It was
because good financial sense and, just different plans just for, how we do finances in the United States and in the West. It's all pretty similar. It's like, obviously don't spend more than you earn. It's wise to have savings. I mean,
Right.
Some of these are just very fundamental things. Another thing is don't get into debt, or is there good debt to have ever? And, they're just different things
don't
like
make
that.
emotional decisions about money.
Sure.
Things like that. And one of the things that is true about consuming a lot of financial information and marriage is a lot of times people will know what to do.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is, okay, yeah, I get it. I know that's what I'm supposed to do, but I'm having a hard time with how.
Yeah, the connection to the implementation of all of it. So, I feel like if somebody had plugged into like a chat GPT or AI, or just kind of, again, doing internet searches, you already know the rules if you've heard things like this and you're listening to me say this, okay? Here, I'm going to go for 4. Are you ready? Okay.
1.
So 1 is listen better.
2.
Speak kindly.
3.
Don't escalate.
And 4.
Fight fair. But
And-
again, and how do we implement this?
Yeah, you've heard that so many times. Every book on marriage, every book on communication talks about those things.
Right. But the issues I think that come up is just in the moment of the conflict, people will raise their voices. Okay. You're not supposed to do that, but that's going to happen. That can happen, right? Defensiveness is going to take over. And we've seen that happen time and time again. As much as you try to regulate, have it not, focus on something else. Yes, defensiveness can take over. And then the conversation just goes really sideways and it's bad. And, Bryon and I have had couples that we've spoken with over the years, premarital coaching, talking to people who have had some issues in their marriage where we're just doing regular during marriage coaching. And it's like we're seeing a husband and a wife who very clearly love each other very much, or an engaged couple. They clearly love each other very much, but they're both red in the face and like crying to us because they want to be better communicators, but they feel like they can't.
Well, and let's just be honest and upfront. We've been that couple before too.
Sure.
It's just we have gotten into things like we counsel or we coach couples, we teach classes, we do this podcast, we wrote a book, and we aren't perfect at following our own rules.
Not even close, friends. So you might be saying, if you're not even perfect at following your rules, why should I even listen to this? And it's like, well, what Bryon and Jennifer Harvey have to say isn't nearly as important as what God is communicating to us. And what we're trying to do is take these biblical principles that we have studied time and time again and put them into a way that can be implemented from things that we're seeing from what the Bible tells you. So what God has to say is huge.
And also experience of
Sure.
being able to, having talked to couples and lived this out. And so here's the big thing with like every communication book, every marriage book, every podcast, including this one, communication advice assumes emotional calm.
Why?
And you're right, but we do. We talk about it. We presume that, oh yeah, you're going to be reasonable and logical in the middle of this knockdown, drag-out fight about parenting.
Well, not knockdown, drag
Okay,
out, but
it was a
it's
metaphor.
An idiom.
It
Okay.
didn't mean
yes.
no hitting.
No, just this
but-
this intense conversation and argument.
Yeah, because every conflict with your spouse or with someone else, but every conflict, your brain responds to it the same way. You're still triggering that fight, flight, or freeze response in the limbic system.
Right. And that's why things are so difficult, because whether you want to get upset or not, it just seems like it can happen and you're going to get worked up. And, Bryon, I know you've done a lot of research into the just about the limbic system.
Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit more about that?
The limbic system, I mean, your emotions are controlled by this part of your brain. Some people call it the lizard part or the old part. I'm not a fan of that terminology, but it's this part of your brain that experiences stimulus first and then tells your limbic system to start producing the hormones necessary for your body to act for this stimulus. That's the system that when you taste really good ice cream, it tells you that you like it, and all the happy hormones come in. That's why chocolate makes you feel good, because your limbic system is tasting that. The chemicals in the chocolate and stuff are going in, and you're producing these hormones that tell you this is how you feel. That's why intimacy, that's why a mother nursing a child, those hormones, those bonding hormones, your limbic system produces that. Well, conflict, your limbic system is telling your body that you are in danger. And your limbic system is responding to the stimulus before the rest of your brain is able to say this danger is not physical. This is not a saber-toothed tiger that is about to kill you. This is not a criminal that's about to shoot you. This is your spouse who loves you and whom you love, and you guys are having a difficult conversation. But your limbic system doesn't know that because your rational brain hasn't processed the data yet. And so it creates these emotional experiences through the hormones that are produced, and then your hormones hijack your brain, and you're hijacked by your emotions responding before you can even think about it.
And how can you have that healthy conflict when your reason has been hijacked by your emotions? And of course, you need to make sure that you're exercising self-control and not freaking out on your partner, not screaming, not using that kind of verbal violence, if you will, against your spouse.
And that's some of the stuff we're going to get into in later episodes. But the first thing is just recognizing and acknowledging and being okay with the fact that you have emotions and you can influence your emotions through what you do, but you can't completely control them.
And the idea of having that knee-jerk reaction where it's just kind of like, I'm ready to go in this direction. It's not even necessarily you need to become more mature. It's biology that's in there.
Exactly. This isn't something like, oh, I should have grown past this by now. Actually, I'm thinking right now, we were recently watching an episode. There's this cat behavioralist that has a TV show. And we were recently watching an episode, and he was saying that this cat that keeps running out, keeps marking the territory, peeing in the house, ripping the blinds, literally climbing the walls, is because the cat's body, the cat hadn't been neutered. It was a male cat. The cat couldn't control its urges to reproduce.
And is trying to get out to do that.
Yeah, that's body's telling him, this is the one thing that your one job. You have one job, cat.
Yes.
And that's to make more cats.
Right.
Which is obviously not good. Get your pet spayed or neutered. It's better for everybody. But that's kind of what's going on here. So don't beat yourself up over, well, I should have grown past this. No, you're dealing with biology. What you, rather than growing past feeling these emotions, is learning how to manage that internal conflict you're experiencing so you can have healthy conflict with your spouse.
Absolutely. And it's about managing, right, this internal conflict that you're having. And the book of James talks about this, and this might be a familiar Bible passage to you. Understand this, my dear brothers and sisters. Let every person be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. And again, we're quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. If we're looking at a Supreme Court Justice, Antonin Scalia, who had passed away some years back, he would add to the end of that and slow to litigate. In other words, slow to file a lawsuit and get involved. So again, quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. But it's just a wise thing to do. And I like that emphasis on listening there and then being slow to speak and then slow to getting angry about it.
And to be able to do that, you need to know, are you physically ready for conflict or not? And this is different because there's physically ready for conflict, as in, am I physically ready to fight? And I'm thinking now, soldiers in conflict, are you physically ready to go to war? If you're physically ready to go to war, you're not physically ready to have healthy conflict with your spouse.
Oh, sure. And I was thinking about, we recently watched the movie with Mark Wahlberg from like 15 years ago called The Fighter.
Okay,
so
yeah,
him getting ready for a boxing match, that's way different than, being ready to have a conversation really to deal with this.
And so the physical responses to stress, right, are like your heart racing.
Sure.
Your muscles tensing, jaw clenching. Those are all things that are really good for, again, the fighter. When you're going into a boxing match, that is getting physically ready for that confrontation. When you become aware of those things, you're not physically ready to have healthy conflict with your spouse.
Right. So if you're starting to sound like the opening lyrics of the Eminem song from 8 Mile, right? It's like, that
palms sweaty, knees are weak, arms are heavy.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. So, then you're not ready to have that conversation
living
with
in Metro
your spouse.
Detroit, you just have to know Eminem, right?
That's the truth. And 8 Mile for that matter.
But there's also mental symptoms of emotional stress. Again, are you physically ready for a conflict? And if you're physically ready to fight, you're not physically ready for healthy conflict with your spouse. And one of them is hypervigilance or sensitivity. And this is one I find in me. I'm more sensitive to critique when I'm not ready to have healthy conflict with you.
That makes sense.
It's like, oh, you'll comment on something that's like, well, that hypersensitivity, I'm not emotionally ready to have healthy conflict because I can't accept critique. So I'm overly sensitive. And another thing, and this is one that is so common, mentally preparing your arguments. If you're already like a lawyer preparing your opening and closing statements for this argument, you are not ready to have a healthy conflict because you're already
Well, you're not being quick to listen, right?
exactly, you're not listening at all. You're processing your own information, your own data. You're not listening to your spouse.
Right. And I mean, for my job as a lawyer, it's like, yeah, I've got to mentally prepare my arguments for my job, but not in communication with my husband.
Right, because it's not going to be healthy conflict.
Right. And it's important to catch these symptoms when they begin, because if you let them continue, you'll enter into the conflict and then you'll start that same cycle of crazy that you're trying to overcome.
Yeah, it's becomes just another fight, and you don't end with healthy resolution to the fight. And so we're going to wrap up this episode. We'll get
Right, because we got two more.
We got two more.
We do.
But that's the thing that we want you to walk away from is, are you ready, physically ready to have healthy conflict with your spouse? Or are you physically ready to have a fight? Because those, unfortunately, are mutually exclusive.
Right. Or again, are you entering the fight, flight, or freeze mode? And how's that going to go or not go for that? Because most couples know what it takes to have a healthy conflict. We've seen the lists. We know what the experts say. But the issue is that we couples often aren't emotionally, mentally, or physically able to use those tools because reason has been hijacked by our limbic systems, and we've entered that fight, flight, or freeze territory. The first step is to notice the symptoms before they take over and cause unhealthy conflict. And in the next episode, we're going to talk about how we calm ourselves down when we notice these things happening so that we can enter the conflict in a healthy way.
Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you. Please rate, subscribe, like, share. Let people know about this podcast, and look forward to sharing the next episode with you in a couple weeks.
Jen and I started Operation Thriving Marriage to help couples and churches take marriages from merely surviving to thriving. We've got our book, we've got a blog, and resources for our coaching ministry, and you can bring us out for an Operation Thriving Marriage experience. For more information, go to operationthrivingmarriage.com. That's operationthrivingmarriage.com.